Welcome to Talkin' Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Terrell.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin' Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. All right, welcome to another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. Today we're here with Karen Richards, who is the director of Prairie Home Cemetery here in Waukesha. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so when did you become the cemetery director, and then what parts of being a cemetery director do you find the most impactful?
So I was asked to be the interim director about 2 years ago, exactly, and then became director about a year and a half ago. As a permanent director. What do I find the most interesting, you said?
Impactful.
Or impactful?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Little of everything.
Helping families.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously people come to us in times of sorrow and need. And so being there and, being able to help families is really important. And then often, probably a lot of time, actually, families come in and pre-plan.
Mm-hmm.
When they're not in sorrow, but they're planning for themselves, which is really nice too, because then they want to explore the different options, and talk about the cemetery, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really nice to be able to help the families, and then also in my role, like planning for the future and ensuring that the funding will be there, on a perpetual basis, so that there's a lot of responsibility with a cemetery, probably more than I had realized coming in, but I take it very seriously.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult kind of working with people who are kind of like at their lowest lows when they're coming in and preparing for funerals for loved ones that have passed maybe suddenly or on like things that haven't been pre-planned or pre-prepared? Not
too bad. I mean, I think I can be an empathetic person, and I'm not always the one that's working directly with the families as well. We have an amazing team. So for that, I'm very thankful. That was very important when I came in. From our grounds crew to our office staff, everybody is very compassionate and caring. I just can't say enough about them.
Yeah.
So you kind of talked about too, like a little bit of the stuff that goes into your everyday, but can you kind of explain that a little bit more? Like, what does an everyday look like for the cemetery director?
I don't think there's a typical day. I don't know if it's more recently. It seems that most days there's some unusual request. That we do a lot of investigative work. It feels like, because records, it's 175 years this year since the cemetery became officially Prairie Home Cemetery. And, records back then were kept differently. So there's, paper files, there's electronic files, there's software. We've been able to always find what we're looking for, but when we're doing the research, but it's very interesting. So there's good files. It's maybe a challenge is combining everything into one place, which is a goal.
Yeah.
So when doing the research too, or detective work, we call it in the office, got more detective work to do. You just learn so much, and you put it all together, and you kind of feel like there's a story there,
So is it like hunting down family members within the cemetery, or is there kind of more information you can kind of glean from those records?
Yeah, well, sometimes, if somebody said, oftentimes we have people coming in and asking where their family member is or friend, where they're interred, and we can look that up and give them a map and tell them how to get there. We also have burial search where people can go right online and navigate to it themselves. not everyone wants to do that
Right.
or has that capability. But it could be, well, are there relatives? And then, you discover that, there's 20 graves there together. They're all the same last name. And, sometimes the family member will come in and explain to us, like, what the relationships were. Or they might say, well, is someone buried here, but they don't really have the full name. We
So it's got to
start
try and
doing
hopefully find someone who's
research,
close.
right? And who has the burial rights? Who, a lot of who's the owner, who's got the burial rights, who can be interred here, who can't be,
So when you buy the family plot, who's got authorization
and
to be
how
buried
far does
there.
that go? Right.
It's always interesting seeing those family plots too, when you've got like someone who was buried in the early 1800s, and then you see a headstone or footstone or tombstone that is much more modern.
Yeah.
And it's like this is literally a family legacy. If we've got our plot here, we got room for 10, 15 people, 16 people in the plot, and you've got it, great great grandparents all the way down to modern generation family members that are buried there.
And it's interesting to see the different style of stones, and you can kind of see, like, the north end of the cemetery is like the older, if you will, sections. They're lettered sections, and then the south side would be the newer sections. And you can see it was very common to have just a family name on a large stone in the center of the plots, and then small stones indicating who each person is. And some of them even just say mother, father, brother, sister.
Right. They may have a first name, they may not.
Right. So we have that information, logged, but their stone may not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always found it fascinating with the masonry that goes into all of those stones, from the super complex ones to even just the more simple ones. But it's almost like a museum, really,
Right.
like seeing like all the different either larger statues or just any type of art or intricacy that they have.
Right. I mean, I've heard that there was a previous director that referred to Prairie Home Cemetery as where Waukesha's history is etched in stone. And I just love that. I think it's really, really cool. And it is.
Yeah,
Like you said, like a
100%.
museum. Right.
Yeah, especially with like all the different symbologies you see on the stones too, and the different meanings of them. There's ones that look like tree stumps at other cemeteries. I don't think Prairie Home has one that looks like a tree stump necessarily, but like there's ones that were like a tree stump, maybe like a life cut short kind of a thing. And there's so many other little symbology things that go into the headstones and tombstones and family plinths and things like that you just have to like start digging into and seeing, like, oh, there's actually more that goes into it of, they may be a mason. There's an equivalent of a female masons group. I think it was called Stars, STAR. Yeah, I think that was what it was. But they've got like an upside down star as theirs, and so people are like, oh no, that's probably Satanism or something. It's like, no, this is like literally the female masons, and you start looking into like things like that, and you learn a lot of neat history just by looking at the stone itself.
Yeah, no, that's really incredible.
And I don't know if you have seen any stones, but there's a couple of companies, I guess, that do like QR codes that can be
I've started to
affixed
see
to
those,
the stones. So if you scanned it, then you might see a video of that person or possibly a story or someone talking about them, which I find very
It's intriguing.
interesting. Yes, I'm thinking, how can we
I
incorporate that?
I know there's one in Prairie Home that's got one.
There's a couple.
I've seen, there's that really tall,
Yes.
6-7 foot tall galaxy looking one, which is a very neat stone with a neat story, but I don't remember enough of it to share it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those bizarre things, because you always think like, like I'm thinking like even on The Simpsons, it's like, oh yeah, you can have a camera with your loved one in the box, and it's like it's almost the equivalent of that. If you can see your loved one, hear them talking again, and it's
Yeah.
It's
Did we get to
interesting.
the point of the future where we can have holograms there in front?
yeah, we're not too far off from that.
There you
Yeah.
go. Hey, there's a business idea.
Yeah, you just press
Don't
the
tell anyone.
Yeah.
you press the button, hear their biography,
Right.
or you hear them telling their biography as a whichever age range they want to be in.
Yeah.
So kind of looking back at your career, who's been your biggest mentor and influence on your career, be it from the cemetery or other career paths you've had?
My career hasn't exactly been linear. And I would say, I don't know that there's one that I would say was the biggest influence, but I try to learn what I can from coworkers and bosses all along. I think that I'm probably a product of what I've learned from all of them.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could name one person that I feel has impacted me the most.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's a lot of people traditionally are. Is it's you learn from a little bit from a lot of people along the way, and
Right.
all those little lessons build up to one bigger one.
Yep.
There's like the idea that nobody is actually ever original. We all are combinations of all the people we meet along the way along our lives.
Right.
And then that's what makes us seem original, because you're just a big melting pot of personalities.
And your experiences.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
Everyone starts off as a plain soup broth, and then whatever you throw into it is what you become.
Exactly.
If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future? And if so, how far in either direction?
So, I think it would be interesting to go to the past to see, truly what it was like, right? And it seems like it would have been, in some ways, a simpler life. Hard work,
Right.
but you work for your life,
Right,
sustenance,
yeah.
right? So
The harder the work, the kind of better off you did in a good way, and you're self-reliant on your own kind of.
yeah. And I think I would want to come back, though.
Oh yeah.
And then I would probably gain some appreciation, right, for like a washing machine or,
So you'd want to kind of interact with the past life, but then still be able to come forward and come back again, and so not necessarily observing just the past, but interacting and
right.
and living the life of.
But
of
I
the
also
past.
think it would be interesting to go to the future, maybe like 100 years or something, and like see. I mean, I'm sure there's things that none of us can even imagine that will be
Right.
part of a daily life. But will that be better? How will people be different? Worrying about our future generations a little bit.
Right.
And then come back and be like, okay, I'd rather go to the past, or
Yeah.
I just want to stay here.
It's gonna be great for the next 25 years.
I'm gonna put on resistance. I don't know. So
Yeah, when I think about like going to the future, I always think of the movie WALL-E, where it's like, okay, everyone's in this space station style, like everything's self-sufficient up there, but it's like, yeah, but everyone seems kind of miserable. We've ruined this planet, and it's like, well, hopefully we're past that, and sure, there may be headsets that control everything, and everything's a virtual experience in some way, but.
But yeah, it sounds like when
anybody
will that happen?
can see or watch you or hear.
Well, we're there already.
Like, yeah, I know.
Big Brother's
1984
watching,
is
listening,
here.
and interacting. Yeah.
So now, kind of sticking on that time travel aspect, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self some words of advice, what would you say?
Maybe be your greatest advocate and not always your worst critic. So, and then maybe like set goals, when you're younger, and just thinking you just keep going on, you have fun, whatever, but like envision your future. What do you want it to be, and what do you want it, what do you see yourself doing? Obviously things change, but
Right.
To have goals as a younger person, I think would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's having those goals and supporting for yourself for who you are is a great idea too. It's actually like I'm thinking like, oh, if I set a goal when I was a kid to like, oh, I want to be an astronaut, might be great, but there's also the job I'm doing now didn't exist when I was growing up.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, you kind of have to set a goal knowing that things will veer in many directions, good and bad. But at least setting goals, short-term goals, and then grand goals too.
And maybe even realizing your strengths and your interests and how that could, how that could lead to a career, and not being afraid to change careers either if your interests change, right?
100%. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
So I don't know if it's advice. I don't know if someone told me this or if I read it on a magnet, which I know I've seen it on a magnet after that. But whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
a good one.
I think about that often.
Yeah.
Not often, but when there's challenges, like if you say, I can't do this, well, you're probably right.
Yeah.
But if you say I can, then you figure out how, right?
Yeah. Making sure you're in the mindset of like, if you think you're never going to do it, you're never going to do it. But if you think you can do it, you're going to do the things to make you can do it. And that's just
you might not be able to do it in that instant, but you'll get the steps to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that one.
That's a good one. All right, circling back. What is something about yourself people might not know?
You did go back to it. I once won a limbo contest on a boat.
All right, that's usually the best combination.
That was another adventure.
I imagine a cruise, or was it just a...
No, it was just, a little glass bottom boat cruise. It wasn't like a big,
That's
not
still
a cruise
fun, though.
ship. Yeah.
I think that makes it more exciting.
Yeah,
Because you expect a limbo on a cruise ship. I don't think you expect it on a glass bottom boat.
Yeah, I was surprised. Didn't know that was happening. But I guess another thing is, I'm not a native of Waukesha, but I've been here a lot of years, and my children are. Mm-hmm. So when this probably isn't good, but when I was going to high school, I was in a neighboring community, and when I took driver's ed, the talk of the sophomore class was, did you have to drive in Waukesha yet? Did you have to go to Waukesha? Because every driver's ed class, when you were behind the wheel, you had to go into Waukesha, and it was all the one-way streets.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a big test, and no one wanted to go back.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic test as tests go.
Yeah, but that made me, when we were looking at homes, I don't want to look at homes in Waukesha. And then we ended up buying our first home and our second home in Waukesha. And I remember thinking somewhat defeated a little bit, but also okay, well, this is my community now. Mm-hmm. And I want my kids to be proud. I don't want them to have to defend living in Waukesha.
Right.
I want them to be able to shout it out, that they're from Waukesha. So, I guess I have an advantage, or I feel fortunate to be doing what I'm doing and what I have done in the past couple decades, to do things that I think can help improve the image of Waukesha, or give back to the community to make it a great place to be. So I think I don't know if it must be a subconscious thing, but I am very passionate about what I do, and I feel very blessed to be passionate, because I don't feel like I don't go to work, why am I doing this, or I hate this. None of that. I love a challenge, and I'm got quite a few challenges, but really I want my kids and everybody else in the community to be proud to say that they live in Waukesha.
Yeah. So going back to driver's ed, do you see many people learning how to drive going through the cemetery? Because I always heard the idea of, well, the worst case scenario is you can't kill anyone. You're not likely to kill anyone in a cemetery.
Yeah, it's funny. I have not seen that, but I have had people tell me stories, that they've come in and they have loved ones that are buried there, and took my son. This is where he learned to drive. How many years ago? So I've heard those stories, but I haven't seen that.
I never knew that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense.
It does.
I mean, the worst you can do is that there's actually people there. Then you're like, all right, we're not driving by that. Anyone around.
Or you could damage a car if you hit a stone or damage a stone.
But you say, I think the stones are more resilient than most cars now.
That's true. Yeah. Right.
All right, coming back to our other questions. So the cemetery is celebrating its 175th anniversary this year. What sort of things have been done and are coming up to celebrate the milestone?
So we have been doing some posts on social media and the city newsletter, like about the history of Prairie Home Cemetery, and I do have some more that will be coming out soon. And they kind of build on each other, and they're on the website as well, right? And then there's a Friends of Prairie Home Cemetery group. It's a 501c3, and as a fundraiser and awareness builder, they are hosting a run walk through Prairie Home Cemetery on October 20th, called Tombstone Trot.
Love the name.
Yeah. And it's not running over stones or on the grassy area. It's all going to be on the roads, so that you can actually get a 5K on the cemetery roads,
which is pretty impressive as cemeteries go.
Yes.
Yeah, there's there has to be a pretty, what is Prairie Home 60
plus acres.
Yeah, so it's a lot of land, but there's still plenty of tarmac and asphalt to run over. And
it's not like it won't be boring,
No.
straight shot. It's not a straight shot, so curvy roads and like Waukesha's history etched in stone. You can see it while you're walking or running. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm also working with our GIS team to put together a story map tour for the cemetery. And I did get the draft. I have to review that. We're starting with a 15-point or 15-stop tour.
Very nice.
So, and then build on that.
Yeah.
See how it's received, make edits, changes if necessary, and then build it up so we can tell more stories about the
I think that's
the walking museum, right?
Yeah. I think that's a really cool tool of being able to just pull it up in your phone, walk around, be able to say, okay, let's roughly find where this person is. You find their family marker, you find their tombstone, you get to learn a little bit more about them, and kind of keeps their history alive and kind of ties a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of buildings in even downtown Waukesha where you walk. It's like, okay, I see a couple names there, like the Nickel Building and Frame Park, and it's like in Cutler Park. It's like, oh, there's them. As you're going through the cemetery, it's like you said, the history is etched in stone. You walk through downtown, you find where they're buried, you see their families, and kind of place a timeline of when those buildings and when those people were around.
Well, and you'll see stones in the cemetery with last names that you're like, why is that familiar? Well, there's a road or a school named after that. So then it would be nice to be able to look, well, why is that? What is their significance, right?
Right.
It would be nice eventually to do an audio tour.
Yeah.
So we'll have to
let us know and we can figure it out.
Really? Okay, that's coming then.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Give us a script, we can talk it through.
My favorite tour, I think, was the audio tour of Alcatraz.
Okay.
It was amazing because they had voices that sounded like they were an inmate or one of the guards or whatever.
Was it just like a scan a code or type in a code and then you learn more kind of a thing? Or
I think at that time, I think you pressed a number or something, or it knew where you were.
Okay.
I think it knew, as you're walking by.
Very cool.
And it would start the, I can't say for sure what it was, but I just thought it was so interesting.
That's very neat.
And sometimes, if there's a lot of people, it's distracting if you're trying to read, where it's easier to hear it.
Right. You can kind of look around and live it a little bit more.
Right.
So how do you pronounce the 175th? What is the word for it?
Don't ask me. I just demi-semi.
Right. Yeah. It's like the demi-semi quincentennial or something like that.
Sepcentennial.
Okay. Is it demi? Okay.
I think it is. I can't remember if it's hemi-demi or semi-demi.
Semi-demi septennial.
And I'm looking on the website and I don't have it here.
You know what? When that was on the scavenger hunt for Jamboree, I had it down and I haven't thought about it for several months.
And I know
don't
we made a
recall.
video
Yep.
of people from around the community
Yes.
saying it too, and everyone
They were pretty good at it.
they were actually fairly good, but it was always fun to see everyone being like, "Oh, how do I say?"
Semi, hemi, semi, septennial.
Yeah.
I think we should do that again. Would you guys be willing to do it? December 3rd is the actual
Yeah.
175th anniversary.
Okay.
Maybe that would be a day to walk around town or something, or leading up to that,
Mm-hmm.
and then post it that day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see what we can come up with.
We could just have it on a big placard. And
Yeah. and
how
then
do you
just-
say this?
Oh, that's actually a really cool, fun idea. More interactive on the street. I always thought it'd be fun to do those like on the street.
Like the
Right.
Billy on the
Videos,
street kind
yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. That's a great idea.
Provided the weather cooperates, we can make that happen. Worst case scenario, we're walking around City Hall and having people as they come in, hopefully being happy about why they're coming to City Hall.
Yeah.
That's right. Or you can get the staff and
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, today is Prairie Home Cemetery's 175th anniversary.
How do you
How
say
do
that?
you say
Yeah.
it? And here's the big.
Yeah.
I like it. So you kind of talked a little bit earlier about families coming in for pre-planning. So what sorts of options are available for someone who wants their final resting place to be at Prairie Home?
Okay, so obviously there's the traditional graves, in-ground burial. And we also have, for in-ground, we have a natural burial section, which is a prairie. It's planted as a prairie. And in those cases, there's not a traditional casket. Usually the body is wrapped in a shroud or perhaps in a wicker or cardboard casket with no metal.
Interesting.
It has to be biodegradable. And then there's no stones in that natural burial area either, no memorial stones. We do have a couple of, we call them cenotaphs. They're large rocks that have engraving. But I would say probably less than 50% of people that purchase a natural burial grave choose to actually even be memorialized on
Really?
that rock.
Interesting.
So they're truly like
So
back
there's
to the
records
earth.
still, but there's no
Right.
I don't know.
Memorialization.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty. I think exactly the word. I was like, that's interesting.
And that's becoming more popular. We do get a lot of inquiries about the natural burial
Right.
area.
'Cause I think it's like one of 3 in the
In
area.
the area. Mm-hmm.
There's like a handful in the state.
Yep.
Wow.
And so that would be, and we also, people will purchase a grave and then have their cremated remains buried too. I mean, so we do have full bodies that are buried in a casket in the ground and not in the natural burial, traditional burial. But also people can place cremated remains in a grave as well. And then we have for full size for caskets, there's crypts. So that's above ground placement of the casket. And then for cremations, we have niches. And we call the structure columbarium that holds niches. And then we also have cremation rocks, lawn niches, cremation benches. So there's quite a cremation garden with commingled cremains.
Okay.
There's an ossuary underground.
And that's kind of
that-
like a big vault, basically, kind of
Yes. And that would be like the most economical option.
With those, do they kind of have the same kind of cenotaph option as
Yes.
well with them?
Yes. So it's a little bit different. The one by the natural burial is inscribed, and the other one is like a bronze plate.
Okay.
That's placed. Yep.
I didn't realize there were so many options.
I actually didn't either.
Yeah, right. I always thought.
And
it was
would you
just-
believe there's still more of that?
Oh, I believe it. Now I do. But I always thought it was just normal, like casket in the ground. Then I knew of the natural one at least, and then cremation. That's all I knew.
Yeah, but you didn't know all the different places that
Yeah,
you could place
all-
cremated
exactly.
remains and memorialize them. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that, so we have an area, we call it our boulevard, that we are working on plans now to expand that into additional cremation options because cremation is becoming so much more popular and the demand is higher. And will incorporate various options. So there's already a columbarium. We have another one coming in hopefully in the next month. But then maybe add to like the cremation rocks and the lawn niches. Like we don't have any available right now, benches. So, and try to make it a very pleasing, aesthetically pleasing landscaped area.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
It's going to be an undertaking, but it will be nice.
Yeah. Are there limitations to how many remains can be buried in a plot? Like for when it comes to cremation, like can you have multiple people buried in like a single plot for that kind of a thing?
So for one plot, if there is a person that is buried traditionally, in a casket in a vault, we can do 2 cremains in addition to that.
They don't have to be buried as deep, I imagine.
Right. It would be above. And then otherwise, there are people that purchase a plot and they'll put up to 3 cremains in one plot.
Okay. And then have you heard of anything of the water cremation kind of processing coming to Wisconsin at all? I know I've heard of it in Minnesota at least.
Yeah, and I think it got approved in Illinois, but I don't think it did in Wisconsin.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I imagine you have nothing.
I'm not aware of this.
So basically, you are put into what looks like almost a giant industrial washing machine, and your flesh is basically taken off your bone via water, and I think is it lye? There might be something else. There's some sort of like mild chemical in it, basically, and then all that's left is your skeleton and bones, and that's what's ground up then. But it's supposed to be generally economical, cost-wise, and ecological, where anything that's left over can be used for fertilizer. And they're trying to figure out like companies to use this as fertilizing things. And you're giving such a face of, I don't like it, but also it's interesting.
Yeah.
So my daughter had said, oh, I think, I would want to be cremated and then my cremains to be used to grow a tree. And I'm like, oh, I hadn't heard of that. So, I did a little research, not a lot. But what I came upon was I think that cremated remains have too much sodium. So it actually has to be nourished with other nutrients in order to actually grow the tree or the plant. So it almost sounds to me, I'm not an expert, but it sounds like maybe it's actually a deterrent to growth.
Right.
So,
it's one of those
feel good kind of thing.
Yeah, because I've seen there's urns where you can just like, oh yeah, it should be able to support tree life, but I feel like there's also like a giant puck of like phosphorus and nitrogen and things a tree needs on top of it, and you're just compost, for lack of better term, that kind of just helps it a little bit. But yeah. People are salty, and salt inhibits growth.
Well, I've always seen too that you can get cremated and like pressed into a diamond or something like that, or stuff. I know I've seen that more for like animals, like your pet. You can get your pet turned into like.
No, people can do it. Yeah. I mean, you become carbon when you're burned, and your carbon can get compressed into artificial diamonds and artificial jewels.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't offer that at Prairie Home Cemetery, but I think another thing is that so many people have, a loved one that's been cremated, and they keep the urn on the fireplace or, sadly, in a closet.
Right.
And I know I talked to somebody that had gone to a garage sale, and there were a couple of urns there, and they opened it, and there were actually
family
cremated
members.
Remains in the urn. So, like, people don't
That's
know what to
uncomfortable.
do with it, right? So I think, we probably have an opportunity to get the word out about the different options that are available for people that maybe want to take, this is like grandma out of the closet and like, let's
get a final resting place.
Place her in a final resting place and memorialize
So it's
her,
not, there's no time limit on it. Someone could have been cremated and been passed through the family for years, and they could still find a resting place, and that's still
right. And
still
then some
fine.
permanent memorialization and records too. So Did I answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, and then some.
Yes.
Okay.
So our next one, this might kind of even be related to, or maybe we already talked about it, but what is the most interesting or surprising fact about the cemetery that you learned about?
I mean, I suppose initially it was all these different options, especially for cremated remains. And actually, I haven't decided, what do I want? I always thought it was one thing, but then you see, oh, that's kind of cool. Well,
Right.
That's cool.
I imagine it can change from day to day when a
yeah.
family comes in. It's like, we're looking at this, this option, and we want to see something like this. And
Yeah. I mean, there are people that definitely know what they want, which is great. I'm still on the fence.
yeah.
It's okay. Nothing you got to worry about anytime soon, right?
Well, hopefully. You never
Yeah.
know, though, right?
Can't hurt to pre-plan, or at least have a, today I feel like cremation. Tomorrow I feel like natural burial. So you'd mentioned that there's the Friends of the Cemetery that are helping support the cemetery, but what other ways can the community get involved at the cemetery?
Oh, well, Andrew, as you know, we're working on the Section Angels volunteer program, where a person, a family, or a group can come in, essentially like adopt a section of the cemetery, and then with a commitment that they would come in at least 1 hour a month, and like walk through the section, pick up twigs, weed, maybe wipe off headstones, not with chemicals or anything, but like, sometimes there's bird doo-doo on them, just water.
Your dust and dirt and
kind of
spider
a
web
dusting
kind of
thing. Just to build the pride in the section. And we do have people that are interested in that, and I know you're working on we're working together for the online application process for that, and I think that we've had good response so far, so I'm expecting that we'll continue that.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people that really do come to the cemetery to visit on a regular basis, and maybe they want to spend more time, but if they felt like they were also able to help out and walk around, then
Right.
come back to their loved one's grave, and then it probably would make them feel good too.
Yeah, it's kind of like an adopt a grave program, but for
Yeah.
probably anywhere from 20 to, I guess, how many graves would be in the largest section roughly? I'd imagine probably
1,000. I
Yeah.
mean,
You say they get pretty sizable in some chunks.
yeah. So it'd be like an adopt a section.
Yeah.
There's smaller sections and larger ones, but if it's a group that wants to do it and they all come out at once, so that's one way. Another thing is we have a memorial tree program that was passed this year. So if somebody wants to plant a tree at the cemetery in honor of someone, or in memory of someone, or to celebrate someone, or something, maybe an anniversary or whatever, it's not doesn't have to be in memory of someone that passed. It can. So we've identified 80 locations within the cemetery that we could plant a memorial tree, and for a donation of $1,200, we would get the tree planted and place a stone with, in honor of, or in memory of, or in celebration of, and place that near the base of the tree.
And would the people who are making these donations, do they get to select the tree, or select how the ornamentation kind of looks, or are they all going to be kind of uniform?
So, the memorialization, the
Yes.
stones will all be uniform,
Okay.
Same size, and they have like so many characters per line. The trees, they'll have a choice of trees depending on the location. So it might be that they want something in a specific area, so we'll show them, which area or what locations are available within that area.
Right.
And then from there, which tree options. And most of the locations that we've identified are along the road, a road. So we definitely want to make sure that the canopy's high.
Yeah.
So
Nice, tall, healthy trees that'll provide some nice shade and some nice
right. And unfortunately, we lost 31 trees this year.
Oh, box elders
The
or
emerald
tree
ash.
disease. Oh, that's yeah.
Yeah, the ash trees. So hopefully we'll get some takers for the memorial tree program and be able to replace some of those.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, even now there's still plenty of trees, but yeah, you see a stump every now and then. You're
Right,
like, oh,
right.
those darn bugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we want to make sure that we have a variety of tree types as well.
All right, so we are getting into the spooky season of October. So I got to ask, do you have any ghost stories from the cemetery that come fresh to your mind, or anything that or maybe even some popular ones that you'd like to share?
Oh. Well, there's the story of the unidentified boy, and I don't have all of the details, but he was found in a quarry in the early 1900s.
I don't remember one either.
And there's a story that there's a woman in black that comes and places cars on his stone. None of my team has seen her, but I don't know where that started. But it is interesting that somebody did purchase a stone, and there's different toy cars placed on that stone. But we don't ever see anyone that does it.
Yeah.
So that's it's actually kind of neat to honor him. There's I think we have a lot of friendly and fun spirits in the cemetery.
Have you experienced any of them? Or I guess, do you believe in ghosts?
I don't know if ghosts is the
Yeah,
word, but well, since I've been there have been some unusual things, like IT related even.
Oh, good.
So I had the same laptop for years, and I got to the cemetery and had trouble with it from probably the first day, and within, I think, the first couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, it just died.
The spirits are taking the energy from it.
It would flicker. There'd be things going on. And I did, when various people had to come and check it, I did kind of joke around and be like, hey, do you hear them? They're laughing at you.
They're just testing you the first couple of weeks. Like, all right, let's see if we need to mess with her a little bit.
There may be a person from IT that probably doesn't want to come back, but but then interestingly, the new laptop that they gave me died earlier this year.
Interesting.
And that's not happened to me before.
You don't hear too many laptops that just kick it that quickly, especially after 2 years or so.
Yeah, well, that was
year and change probably.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, there's probably some spirits that are just feeding off some energy there.
Yeah.
They're just coming and playing on the computer all day, and
I
it just
know,
wears
and
it out.
Yeah.
Solitaire.
They're not used to the technology, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what does the future of Prairie Home Cemetery hold? Either developments, offerings, or events? I know we kind of talked about some of those, but if there's anything else too that we didn't touch on that you'd want to share?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, that we'll be planning a new cremation area in the boulevard, and so I am hopeful that we'll have that started, at least some of the options available, and a rendering of what it will look like by next year. And then there are areas that are undeveloped that I'd like to get a master plan for the cemetery so that we know going forward what's the best way to develop those areas.
Kind of based on need of, are people looking for burials, cremations, more natural sites, things like that.
Trends and making the best use of the space, etc. So there's that. We are participating in Waukesha Unlocked. And the Friends of Prairie Home Cemetery will be offering guided wagon tours through the cemetery, both Saturday and Sunday on October 12th and 13th.
Yep.
So that will be a great way to learn a little bit about the history of Waukesha etched in stone.
Nice.
So the cemetery itself isn't full yet by any means.
Right.
Does it seem like it will be full anytime soon, or is there still plenty of space for
There's
anyone
plenty
who's
of
planning?
space, and that would be part of the master planning to kind of determine, how many years out are we, given. We average about 200 interments a year. And there's already 24,500 plus
Wow.
people that have been interred at Prairie Home Cemetery.
Wow.
Do you know what the oldest I think the oldest one is probably from the first year, roughly,
Yeah, and
or well documented one at least.
there's evidence of some even before that, before it became a cemetery. So but it would be roughly 1849, 1850. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember there was a boys' school or a boys' reformed school of some variety where they may have been buried and they may not have been documented at all.
Correct.
So that could be part of it.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean,
a lot of history. Yeah.
Even if you just drive around for, I think my wife and I spent not an hour and a half on Saturday just driving around and looking at different headstones. Don't know a single person buried there personally, but you recognize a couple names here and there. Like, I mean, just like you said, like, you're like, all right, Gaspar. I'm like, okay, what do I know about Gaspar? Like, you got the street downtown, and then you learn a little bit about him along the way. And actually, that was one of my favorite stories from the Historical Society had a walk, and they said that I think it was Charles Gaspar, was a 14-year-old boy, signed up to be in the Civil War, but you needed to be 16 to enlist. So there were many boys that would write the number 16, put it under the heel of their shoe, and when they were asked if they were above 16, they could say yes and not be wrong. So he enlisted.
That's the story.
He was enlisted and was a drummer for the militia that he was a part of. So he saw combat, but he never carried a weapon.
Okay.
So kind of fun and interesting stories you kind of pick up along the way.
Very interesting. And of course, Les Paul is buried at Prairie Home Cemetery and has a large memorial area. And did you get to see that?
Saw that, and him and his mother are buried there.
And people come, and there's a story there. You can sit and read the story, and a lot of people place their guitar picks on his
nice.
grave. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So it's a very quaint, quiet area to kind of visit. You see a lot of, I guess there's a lot of musicians that come out because now people don't fully realize that Les Paul was the inventor of the modern electric guitar as it is, the what is it, solid body guitar at least. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that pay their homage to it by leaving a guitar pick, and it's a pretty neat area if you haven't been there.
And did you see former Governor Dreyfus's stone in the shape of Wisconsin?
That's a very cool one.
Very impressive.
Go ahead. Yeah, you got to drive around a little bit.
Yeah, well, because I've done the drone footage for the cemetery, and so I've seen some of these things, but I've never.
You only have the 1,000-foot view. You got to go. Yeah, you got to get that 3-foot view.
Yeah.
And it's always coming quick by, so I don't get the time to stand and look and read and everything.
Yeah. Go in the fall when the trees have changed.
Yeah, right. That's a nice time. Yeah.
Yes, we're hoping it'll be prime for Waukesha Unlocked and the Tombstone Trot.
Yeah.
Right.
With the prairie being there, do you have to do prairie burns or anything like that to kind of maintain the regular prairie health, I guess, for kind of...
I know that there's been a burn, not since I've been there, but we'll have to look into whether or not we have to do that. We do cut it down in the fall.
Yeah, that's kind of the one odd thing with prairies. They're very temperamental. If they grow great and then you have to cut them down, it's this looks like an odd area, but it's still, by the people in a weird way.
All right, I think we're ready for the rapid fire questions.
All right.
You ready? All right. So you don't have to give any explanation for any of these. You can just give your answer. If you want to defend it, go for it.
Okay.
All right. So are you an early bird or a night owl?
Night owl.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite season of the year?
Probably summer. The days are longer. I like the light.
That's a good one.
I think there's a lot of time where the night owl and the coffee answers go back to back. For you. Usually find a night owl likes coffee. I wonder why.
What is your go-to comfort food?
Well, when it's cold, soup.
Favorite soup? Or go-to soup if you make it yourself or order it? Or
Yeah, like my husband makes the version of Olive Garden's zuppa toscana.
Ooh,
It's very good.
that sounds fantastic.
And chicken noodle, of course.
Classic. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Favorite holiday?
That's a tough one. I like Christmas. Thanksgiving is nice too because we host a lot of people and it's fun to get everyone together and play games after the food.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Do you prefer sweet or savory?
Savory.
Favorite sport to watch or play?
Probably football to watch. Although I like any sport if I'm there in person.
Sure.
That's
I
fair,
enjoy. I'm not big on watching on TV.
Yeah.
You say the atmosphere
So
helps a lot. That's how I feel about baseball. Is like I struggle to watch baseball on TV, but if I'm there, I'm fully invested in
Same.
it.
If I'm there in person, I'm looking at everything else besides the game half the time. There's just because there's so much going on.
And maybe that's why I enjoy it.
Yeah. It's the people watching.
Yeah.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Have to be Moose Tracks.
Okay.
Always a good one.
Would you call yourself more introverted or extroverted?
Introverted.
Favorite type of music?
That changes, but I would say one thing that doesn't change is classic rock.
Okay.
Any particular genre of classic rock?
80s.
Okay.
Yep.
Favorite color?
Some people would say black, but black is actually not a color, right?
Well, it depends how you look at
I
it.
guess,
It's either
yeah.
all the colors or none
Yeah.
of the colors.
It fits well with the cemetery.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe red, blue. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. And then, do you prefer fruity or chocolate candies?
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Go-to chocolate candy?
Rolo.
Ooh,
Rolos are good.
I don't buy them because they're
because then they're gone right
Yeah.
away.
bad.
They are underappreciated
Have you ever
candy, though.
made the pretzel Rolo things?
The pretzel turtles.
Yeah.
Those
yeah.
disappear very quickly as well.
Yeah.
Especially after a couple days where the pretzel kind of comes to the same consistency as the pecan on top, and they almost become like it's just a nice, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Then you throw one M&M on top of them.
You just keep stacking and stacking.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the problem of eating them as well. Is you just keep stacking and stacking, and 2 hours later you're feeling a little sick,
And they're all gone.
Yeah, and they're gone.
Do you have a favorite? Do you like chocolate?
I usually go to fruity candies over chocolate.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I like the fruity sour candies.
Yeah.
Fruity sour. And sour too?
Not as much, but yeah, usually just fruitier candies is like, well, I'd rather grab a bag of Skittles than over like a bag of M&Ms most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And I don't know why necessarily. I think it's just like the variety of flavor.
Okay.
That's what I think it is for me too. Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't do like chocolate. I want something else in it. You know, like
Chocolate
peanut
and caramel,
butter.
chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. Peanut butter, peanut M&Ms,
Yeah,
Reese's
yeah.
Pieces.
Yeah.
I think that the only time I'll go chocolate purist is if it's like s'mores. Then you got to go with your Hershey bar marshmallow.
Well, I don't know anyone who goes to the store and it's like, I just want a Hershey bar. Like, there's so many options.
Right.
I think
To me, that would be like buying vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not for apple pie. You know?
That's true. Yeah, for any a la modes, vanilla is by far superior.
Yeah.
Or I'd even say what are the streusels? Not streusel? No.
Crisp or like
Crisps. Yeah, apple crisp.
yeah,
Thank you. Yeah. Streusel's the topping on it. All right. So that's all we
Nice.
got. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.